The ASEAN-India Trade in Goods Agreement, or AITIGA, was envisioned as a game-changer for India and the 10 ASEAN nations. This agreement was not just a piece of paper but a strategic move to foster economic growth and cooperation in a region brimming with potential. By slashing tariffs on goods, the pact aimed to create a vast, dynamic economic corridor, linking over 650 million consumers with India's booming market. The reduction in tariffs was expected to make goods more affordable, stimulate trade, and encourage businesses to explore new markets. Signed in 2009 and effective from 2010, AITIGA was a cornerstone of India's Look East, later Act East policy, meant to boost trade, investment, and strategic ties in the Indo-Pacific. This policy shift was a clear indication of India's intent to play a more significant role in the regional economy and geopolitics. For India, it promised access to a rapidly growing market. For ASEAN, it offered diversification beyond China, Japan, and the US. The agreement was seen as a win-win, providing new opportunities for businesses and consumers alike. The agreement focused solely on goods, not services or investments. Those came later. This initial focus was intended to build a strong foundation of trust and cooperation before expanding into more complex areas of trade. But while the vision was shared prosperity, the reality has proven far more complicated, especially for India. Indian businesses have faced challenges such as increased competition and regulatory hurdles, which have sometimes overshadowed the benefits of the agreement. Calls for a fundamental review have grown louder as the pact's imbalances have become clear. Critics argue that the agreement has not delivered on its promises, and that a reassessment is necessary to address the disparities and ensure mutual benefits for all parties involved. Subscribe, like, and share Cosmo Academia. India's push for AITIGA was both economic and strategic. The goal: integrate with Southeast Asia's booming economies, plug Indian industry into regional value chains, and build a resilient Indo-Pacific partnership. Lowering trade barriers was meant to make Indian manufacturing globally competitive and foster deeper ties beyond just trade, spanning politics, culture, and security. For ASEAN, India was a vital new market and a counterweight to China's dominance. The deal opened doors for ASEAN's exports and investment, while India hoped to leverage its strengths in IT, pharma, and engineering. The architects believed this synergy would drive mutual prosperity and trust. That optimism brought AITIGA from concept to reality. At its core, the ASEAN-India Trade in Goods Agreement, or AITIGA, was a bold step toward economic integration. It slashed or eliminated tariffs on over 90% of traded goods between India and the ASEAN nations, aiming to boost trade, lower costs, and create new opportunities for businesses and consumers on both sides. This sweeping reduction in tariffs was designed to make it easier for goods to flow across borders, encouraging greater economic cooperation and regional growth. The most open category, known as the normal track, saw duties drop to zero on thousands of products. Everyday items like electronics, clothing, and household goods became more affordable and accessible, fueling trade and benefiting consumers. This rapid liberalization was meant to create a win-win situation where businesses could expand their markets and consumers could enjoy a wider variety of products at lower prices. But not all sectors were ready for such open competition. Sensitive lists allowed some tariffs to remain, protecting vulnerable industries like textiles, agriculture, and steel. These lists were carefully negotiated to shield jobs and livelihoods that could be threatened by sudden import surges, giving local producers time to adapt to the new trade environment. Exclusion lists went even further, keeping the most sensitive goods, such as certain Indian agricultural products, completely off-limits to tariff cuts. Items like rice, wheat, and select fruits and vegetables were protected to ensure food security and safeguard the interests of millions of Indian farmers. Special products, including palm oil and pepper, were given a unique status. Instead of immediate tariff elimination, these goods faced slower, phased reductions. This approach was intended to shield Indian farmers from sudden competition, allowing them to adjust gradually while still opening the door to increase trade over time. This three-tiered system, normal track, sensitive lists, and exclusion lists, was a delicate balancing act. It aimed to promote liberalization and economic growth, while also providing protection for sectors deemed vital to national interests. Negotiators hoped this structure would foster trust and cooperation, making the agreement more acceptable to all parties involved. However, the mechanics of these lists and categories were complex. While they offered flexibility to address national concerns, they also created loopholes and administrative challenges. Businesses and officials often found themselves navigating a maze of paperwork, rules, and exceptions, which sometimes slowed down the very trade the agreement was meant to encourage. In practice, these lists became battlegrounds for competing interests. Industry groups, farmers, and policymakers all lobbied to have their products included or excluded, leading to intense debates and ongoing negotiations. The process highlighted the difficulty of balancing open markets with the need to protect vulnerable communities. The result is a patchwork of access and protection that continues to shape trade between India and ASEAN. While the agreement has opened many doors, it has also left some barriers in place, fueling a debate that remains as relevant today as when the deal was first signed. AITIGA recognized ASEAN's economic diversity, from Singapore's wealth to Cambodia's fragility. Developed members cut tariffs faster. Less developed ones, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, got more time. This differential treatment was meant to ensure fairer benefits and protect weaker economies from sudden shocks. But in practice, India's market opened more uniformly, while reciprocal access varied widely. The uneven playing field is now a major reason India wants a comprehensive review. Subscribe, like, and share Cosmo Academia. 15 years on, India's optimism has faded, replaced by a ballooning trade deficit with ASEAN. While exports to ASEAN doubled, imports tripled, leaving India with an $86 billion deficit. Indian officials say the deal is structurally tilted. India opened 71% of its tariff lines, but key ASEAN economies offered far less. This asymmetry gives ASEAN exporters easier access to India than vice versa. There's also concern about Chinese goods entering India via ASEAN, exploiting lax rules. The result? A pact that's failed to deliver mutual benefit, fueling calls for urgent overhaul. What was once a strategic pillar is now seen as a flawed deal in need of repair. Indian industry's frustration with AITIGA is palpable. Manufacturers, especially MSMEs, say cheap ASEAN imports have eroded their market share and profits. Sectors like steel, chemicals, and electronics have been hit hard, unable to compete with tariff-free goods. Industry bodies blame lax rules of origin, which let Chinese products slip through under ASEAN labels. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has called out this China's B-team problem. The demand renegotiate AITIGA with stricter rules, fairer tariffs, and safeguards against import surges. The message is clear: free trade must also be fair trade. India formally sought a review of AITIGA in 2019, aiming to fix market access rules of origin and trade remedies. But ASEAN was slow to respond. Negotiations only began in 2024 after years of delay. Despite multiple rounds, progress has stalled. ASEAN appears reluctant to change a deal that benefits them. India insists on a timely, meaningful review, but the deadlock persists. This standoff threatens not just trade, but the broader ASEAN-India partnership. Without reform, the agreement's future and regional cooperation hangs in the balance. The diplomatic impasse is now a test of both sides' commitment to a fair partnership. Subscribe, like, and share Cosmo Academia. The AITIGA experience has reshaped India's trade strategy. India is now cautious about deals with large manufacturing blocs that compete with its domestic industry. The focus has shifted to FTAs with advanced economies, like the UK, EU, and Gulf states, where interests are more complementary. These new deals prioritize services and protect sensitive sectors, especially MSMEs. India's approach now balances offensive interests, export growth, with defensive ones, domestic protection. Recent FTAs reflect this shift, with greater stakeholder consensus and higher standards. The era of lopsided pacts is over. India is now a more assertive, selective trade negotiator. The future of AITIGA, the ASEAN-India Trade in Goods Agreement, hangs in the balance. After years of negotiations and mounting trade tensions, both sides now face a critical crossroads. The stakes are high, not just for India and ASEAN, but for the entire Indo-Pacific region, as the outcome will influence trade flows, supply chains, and economic growth for years to come. The best-case scenario is that ASEAN steps up to the challenge and commits to genuine reform. This would mean stricter rules of origin to prevent trade circumvention, fairer and more transparent tariffs, and the introduction of modern safeguards that protect both sides' interests. Such changes could pave the way for a balanced and forward-looking AITIGA 2.0, unlocking new opportunities for businesses, workers, and consumers across the region. But if negotiations stall and the deadlock continues, India may be forced to take unilateral action. This could include imposing non-tariff barriers, tightening customs checks, or even considering withdrawal from the pact altogether. Such moves would risk a cold peace in trade, with both sides losing out on the benefits of deeper integration and cooperation. India's demands are clear and have been consistent throughout the review process. New, more rigorous rules of origin are needed to ensure that only genuine ASEAN goods benefit from the agreement. Tariffs must be recalibrated to reflect current economic realities and to address India's concerns about trade imbalances. Additionally, India is pushing for robust dispute resolution mechanisms. These would help resolve disagreements quickly and fairly, giving businesses on both sides the confidence to invest and trade without fear of sudden policy changes or unfair practices. The outcome of these talks will have far-reaching consequences for India's Act East policy and its broader role in the Indo-Pacific. A successful agreement could strengthen India's position as a regional leader and trusted economic partner, while also supporting ASEAN's vision of a stable, prosperous, and interconnected Asia. If the review succeeds, it could revitalize the partnership, boost trade volumes, and create new jobs and opportunities for millions of people. It would send a powerful signal that India and ASEAN are committed to working together for mutual benefit. But failure to reach an agreement could weaken ties at a time of global uncertainty, leaving both sides vulnerable to external shocks and missing out on the benefits of regional cooperation. The world is watching closely as India and ASEAN try to bridge their differences. Their ability to find common ground will not only shape their own futures, but also set an example for other regional partnerships facing similar challenges. The next chapter of the ASEAN-India Pact will define the region's economic future, determining whether it moves toward greater prosperity and cooperation, or faces new barriers and missed opportunities. Subscribe, like, and share Cosmo Academia.